then they analyzed as to who answered which type of reply, who gave which type of reply. When they looked at the negative reply, they saw that these people never interacted with a Muslim. They never picked up any literature regarding Islam. And they had no neighbors or classmates who were Muslim. And the positive reply was due to those people who had interacted with Muslims, they had neighbors that were Muslims, they were studying with Muslims, they were living around Muslims. So they had a better idea. So what does this mean? Both ways. Muslims need to do their job of living the message of the Qur'an, explaining it, and at the same time, the non-Muslims need to explore firsthand as to what is the message of the Holy Qur'an. Now, these instructions are found in the Holy Qur'an also. I just want to relate one of the Quranic stories to you. God Almighty says in the 7th juz of the Holy Qur'an that the Qur'an is divided in many parts. I mentioned that there are 114 chapters. There are 30 sections. In the 7th section, the verses are as follows. وَإِذَا سَمِعُوا مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَى الرَّسُولِ تَرَى أَعْيُنَهُمْ تَفِيضُ مِنَ الدَّمِ. The translation of these verses are that remember the time when a group of people came and when they heard the verses of the Holy Qur'an, they were so inspired that they began shedding tears. They began shedding tears. So what's the context, what's the background of these verses? It was a group of 70 Christians who came from Najd, from a place in the Middle East where there were prominently Christians. They came and they heard about the man Muhammad, who's claiming to say he has the final revelation. And he's being inspired by God with the message of the truth. So this group of Christians, and they were learned Christians, they were priests, they were reverends. And they came to see Muhammad, and they also came to seek some knowledge and some clarification. So, when they came, the Prophet Muhammad recited the verses of Surah Al-Yasin, which is the verses which we regard in the Holy Quran as the heart of the Holy Quran. And when the Prophet Muhammad recited them and explained them, they said, this seems to be the very same message that was revealed to Jesus. And they began shedding tears because they felt as if this was the Bible. They felt it was as if the gospel. So they were moved by it. And they understood that the message of Muhammad was not a new message. It was a continuation of the message that was given to the Prophet Jesus for the people, for the masses. Anyone know who this individual is? Yes.
I might be mistaken, but is it the German chancellor?
Okay, I wish I knew the German chancellor.
Right.
No, this is Yvonne Ridley. She's a British journalist, and she's a thinker, basically. When September 11th happened, tragic events, Afghanistan, they made an official statement when the Taliban were ruling that from this point onwards, no non-Muslim is allowed to enter the country. Afghanistan made this announcement. Yvonne Ridley was a journalist working for one of the British tabloids. And she was already in the region. She was somewhere in Pakistan, etc. So her story is all over the internet if you want to read the details, but I'm just giving some brief pointers to it. When she was already there, the company said, if you can somehow get into Afghanistan and report to us from Afghanistan what's happening. Because if you recall the situation, it was very tense. That time, the Taliban had Osama bin Laden in their custody, etc., and there were negotiations going on. So what she did is, she got into Afghanistan without being noticed. After a week or two, she was captured by the Taliban. And she explains her story. I don't want to get into the details as to what happened, etc., but they let her go. They kept her for about 10 days, and they said, we will only let you go if you do one thing for us. If you read the Holy Quran. So obviously her life was at stake. She said, I'll read it, don't worry. Okay, so she writes that, the United Nations plane came, and we went back. We were a few British and foreign people and especially me with a camera and with my pen and my journalist activities, they were really upset. So they let her go. After 6 years, after she was released, she recalled, she said, I promised to one of those individuals that I'll read the Holy Qur'an. And she writes that before I even picked up the Holy Qur'an, I had the most negative views about Islam. I had the most negative views about treatment to women, treatment to children, and the ideology of how Muslims treat non-Muslims and interfaith groups, etc. And I didn't really want to read it, but I felt that I've made a promise. So I want to live up to my promise. And it so happened that the very first chapter she opened was a chapter that is titled MSA, meaning women. There's a whole chapter in the Holy Qur'an that's just titled women. And she started reading. And this is her words. My mind blew up. I was so impressed by the Holy Qur'an and the rights that are given to women, and I've been deceived. I've been cheated. When I write, she says, when I write an article for the tabloid, I have to take both sides of the story. We know, those of you who are in journalism, that when you report on a story, you have to look at all angles. So if there's an opposing angle, you've got to report it. You can't leave it out, or else it's not a justified article. There are some laws and rules that journalists follow. So she's saying that when I write an article, and I have to study from all angles, I have to see the situation from all angles, from within, from external. But I've been cheated all this time, and I've been relying on the news and things like that. But when I open the Qur'an and I see that these verses are revealed 1,431 years ago, and it's talking about women with the rights that women have the right to inherit. Women have